Now, as we mentioned in the introduction, this course is designed to give you a good foundation upon which you can build future skills. So to that end, we will start with a quick tour of the interface. This helps us identify some of the tools that are at our disposal in Excel, and it will help us establish a common language that we'll use throughout the course. So to start out the interface here, I've opened up the Excel for Busy People sandbox, and I'll make this file available to you for you to practice with as we go throughout this course. And it's not going to look like exactly what you see on the screen here. We're going to build some of these things as we go along. The Excel file itself, including the sandbox file, is known as an Excel workbook. So the workbook file contains one or more worksheets, and these are the individual spreadsheets that can be contained in an Excel workbook. What do each of the worksheets consist of? A massive table of cells and rows and columns. In fact, the intersection of the column and the row denotes a cell in the worksheet. Now, how many are there? There are a lot. In fact, in terms of the columns, if I were to hold this arrow key down and continue on to the right, there are up to 16,000 possible columns you can add to one worksheet in an Excel workbook. It just gives you an idea of the power of this application. Now, in terms of getting back to the very first cell in your spreadsheet, remember this shortcut. Control Home. If you hit Control Home, if you're using the PC, then that'll take you to the cell number A1 in your worksheet. So that brings us to one of the important aspects of the Excel interface, and that is the address of a particular cell. Now, the default address for each of the cells in your Excel spreadsheet is the column and then the row identifier, but you can rename this if you want to. So you just have to click in the name box and you can type in a more human readable name like title or total or something like that if you want to keep track of that information in your Excel spreadsheet. The other important part of the interface is this right here. This is the address bar. And the information that you see in the address bar doesn't necessarily what you see in the cell itself. A lot of times you will have formulas and functions in the address bar that will show you the calculation that is used to get to the number that is displayed in the individual cell. Above the address bar and the name box is the Office ribbon. The Office ribbon consists of tabs. Some of the tabs are specific to something that you click on in your spreadsheet. So if you're working with a chart, you should see a context-sensitive set of tabs added to the ribbon so that you can design and format the chart in this instance. Also on the left-hand side, this is the backstage view. Now, most people coming to Excel already have a pretty good understanding of the Office ribbon. And if you want to know more about the Office ribbon, I have a separate course on that, or a separate section in some of the courses I've created called 7 Things That Every Human Must Know About Office. Lastly, as we take this guided tour, I do want to point out the things that are going on in the status bar. So the status bar is kind of an interesting space. It can give you a lot of instant information about selected cells or selected ranges of cells in your spreadsheet. It has a zoom slider for starters here on the right-hand side. It has some page break preview, some different things you can do with the page layout and the normal view so you can switch views, and this is similar to using other Office applications. The other part that's interesting here is that if you give that status bar a right click, you see all of the items that are enabled by default. And you see lots of check marks in this menu here as you customize the status bar. You may be thinking to yourself, well, where are all these things here? Well, it again can depend on the selections you make within the spreadsheet itself. So for example, you see that the average and the count and the sum are all checked, but you don't really see anything down here. And that's true until you make a selection of a range of numeric values, and then you can see at a glance the average, the count, and the sum. So just something to be aware of as you get started with Excel is the types of information that can be added to the status bar as you're working with cells in the spreadsheet. Now, earlier in this very lesson, I showed you how you could go to the very top left cell in your Excel spreadsheet with Control Home. Now, if you're using the Macintosh version of Excel, don't worry about it. I've got a keyboard shortcut reference guide for you to download as a part of this course. So make sure you grab that as you go forward. And as mentioned, we are going to be working with this sandbox, but if you want to practice and build this sandbox from scratch, you certainly have the ability to do so quite easily. All you really have to do is search for the MLS standings. Just do a Google search or a Bing search for MLS standings. And then I'm using the information that is from this table that appears with the standings, the matches played, the wins, the losses and draws, and so on. And then I also did a search for MLS attendance in 2018. And that got me to a website called soccerstadiumdigest.com. I've got it here on the attendance sheet of the workbook in terms of this source. So if you want to recreate this information on your own, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I'll walk you through the process starting in the next lesson.